Good evening. Welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. I'm Joe Cook, sitting in for LC. We got Eric Naleen, we got Drew Kelson, we got Ian Boyd, and we are getting ready for the Peach Bowl. Thank y'all for joining. Make sure to head to Inside Texas. You can get 1 week for $1. But if you're here, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. We'll be talking all things about this upcoming Peach Bowl. Got to talk to a lot of different players today, a lot of different storylines coming out of the day as we approach the college football playoff quarterfinal. At this point, a lot of focus on quarterbacks, and one is talking Eric, and the other is being diplomatic, to say the least.
Yeah, you knew Quinn wasn't going to take the bait on any of those media queries today, in regards to what Sam Levitt said about, he wants to prove that he's the best quarterback and all that. And really what Levitt said, it really isn't all that bad. It's maybe not wise to say that publicly, but certainly you want him thinking that. But his problem, of course, is he's going to go up against the Texas defense, and Quinn is going up against the Arizona State defense. So not exactly apples to apples comparison. But Quinn, like he always does, he's very mature, took the high road, kind of has that professional approach that, Sark, said when he first arrived at Texas, he wanted to instill in the program. I think, if anything, today reminded us just how much that Quinn has matured in his time at Texas. He went from the mullet to the clean cut haircut to, dropping some useless weight that was, maybe indicative of a different sort of a college person, frat boy partier. Started taking football a lot more serious, and it started taking everything more serious. And that's, Quinn, just another reminder of how mature he is at this point.
It's been, Quinn is very media savvy. He knows what the right things to say are, what the right or what the wrong things to say are. And Drew, it's one of those things where you can give your opponent fodder if you're careless, but you can also give your opponent fodder if you mean to do it as well. Like, you have to back it up.
It's funny because bowl games always, you have the mics and names of people or just in front of players that don't usually have a mic in front of them. You have this all-time just confidence, as players are supposed to have and expect to have in these situations. So, and then you have what Texas is used to really in any bowl game or sometimes even throughout the seasons is just being the Super Bowl, knowing that you're going to get somebody's best shot, knowing that it means everything for them coming to this game. So this isn't unfamiliar territory for Quinn. It's not for Texas players. We see a lot of this from week to week. There's always a soundbite here or there. And it seems to come more so from teams that just don't match up from a talent perspective. But, hey, you expect that. You expect them to be confident. And so it's just good to see that the guys are used to it and they don't get caught up in the mess.
It seems to come from Big 12 teams, right? Like, what an odd coincidence that all these teams in the Big 12 keep trying to tear Texas down. And that's what I wrote about over on Inside Texas. Used to, you could punch down on a bad Texas team, but now you have to tear down a good Texas team, and most are not successful in doing that. We got a lot of topics. Go ahead.
On this, one more note on this. I wonder if Kenny Dillingham was like encouraging that, or if he was like, "Oh, geez, I forgot that one of the things you got to do at this level is tell your quarterback not to say stuff like that." Like, did he hype his players up? Is he excited for that? Does he want Quinn to maybe be trying to overdo it? Or is this a young coach that just forgot to check a couple boxes on the big game experience kind of deal?
Yeah, I kind of wondered the same. It's kind of in line with their gambling mindset right now and their aggressive mindset. So I wondered the same thing.
I don't think it matters. I think that the main thing is when your players speak out, you can go hold them accountable and, say it with your chest. So if you want to say it in the mic, now you have 48, hours or more before the game just to get your mind right and just be prepared to back it up.
Sure. How much of a difference did it make when Bobby Carpenter and AJ Hawk were talking about the game against you all? And they were saying, like, our goal is that when Vince Young leaves here, he's not going to be a Heisman contender anymore. And all that, whatever else they said. Do you remember that?
No, I remember all that. And you know what? I expected from Ohio State. I mean, they've been on a high horse, and I mean that's you expect it. Those guys had every sense and every reason to be confident, but they also were kind of, I mean, at the time, I mean, they were players. They were true. There wasn't any PR telling them what to say or what not to say. They were leaders on that team. They spoke their mind, and that was probably a different era at the time. What's funny is, speaking of another Carpenter, I did play in the final, the last game we played against Arizona State, and Rudy Carpenter was the quarterback. That's what I thought you were asking about. Rudy Carpenter talked a lot of trash that week. I mean, even when we were at Disney, just kind of going through, we went to SeaWorld. Just like running to him at SeaWorld where we're doing our bowl game events. He's talking trash. So the difference with that is you go from, hey, I just want to get the sack, to, hey, I want to mess you up. Like that's really the difference. It doesn't stop the motivation from the standpoint of doing your job and making the play, but it does change maybe how you want to inflict a little more pain if you can, or get the opportunity.
With that, we got a good question here from Helio Castillo, a guy who's always been around, and appreciate you coming in. Besides travel and schedules to meet during these bowl games, what else can the early enrollees or transfers benefit from? And Eric, I know you talked about this a little bit, maybe on the Monday on the morning live, but we got Cole Brevard, Justice Terry, Michael Terry, Lance Jackson, Brad Spence, all with the team right now. Snapped a few pictures of Lance and Justice, and even got PK to talk about what Lance brings to the table, and Lance himself to talk about what it's like being on campus. But what are some of the things that these guys can benefit from being in these practices already?
Well, really how to conduct themselves in front of media. They, a lot of their players, a lot of the teammates, their brand new teammates, are really getting asked questions for the first time. You reached out to Trevor Gooseby, and you talked to a number of guys that really aren't used to the spotlight, but they're able to see that firsthand, and also preparation. Get to see how the coaches conduct themselves, see how the coaches really coach in a pretty high stakes environment. I think it's just speeds up the acclimatizing, as Sark's word for it, and just gives them better familiarity what life is like in big time college football. It's funny that the first two games that these guys that are on campus are going to be or the first one at least is going to be a playoff game. If they win that, it'll be another playoff game. They win that, another playoff game, and then Ohio State. So there's a chance that these guys' first four games they ever prepare for are about as big as it gets. I think that's going to definitely do them wonders preparing for college football going forward.
In the case of Lance specifically, a guy who you have maintained over and over that he's going to be a jack, even if he grows to like 275, 280, like he's going to be a jack. We got PK, and you can go to Inside Texas, read the story that Justin Wells wrote about him being able to play that position because of his movement skills. What makes Lance Jackson the 5-star, on threes number 8 prospect that he was?
Yeah, it's just the fact that people think that you move because of a certain weight. Once you get a weight, they got to move you. No, you move once you don't move right for that position, and he's going to be able to move right for that position while weighing a lot more than most players just because of his movement skills. You could see how he moved at tight end. I was in love with him as a tight end based on his sophomore film. I felt like he could be a high-level college player. Now I think he's already at 275. I think he could play jack at 290, 300 even. He's got crazy genetics. I go back to talking about his dad. His dad is 6'10", but his dad is built like a defensive end that's 6'10". So not a guy that's, just because they're big doesn't mean they're going to outgrow the position necessarily, because he moves so well. Look at his brother's smaller than him, but still a big guy that didn't outgrow the position. I think there will be times you want to play him inside just because he's 300 pounds. He might be 3rd and 10. That's just another way to get more athletic up front. But I don't foresee him moving from jack, and they didn't recruit like he was going to move from jack either.
If you even watch how they played Sorrell and Burke this year, they'll play him inside at 4 eyes pretty often when they can, or they'll play him as like 5s, but they'll ask him to 2 gap into the B gap. They're doing all kinds of stuff already that it would be beneficial to be 280 if you're going to do it. So I think probably PK's ideal would be to have this kind of guy they can play outside or play inside, and is athletic at either one. But the guys that are actually like strong or quick enough to do it are pretty rare, I would say.
Going to go to this one from our guy Huff Tex, and Drew, I'm going to throw this your way. As a former strength athlete, saw Torrey Becton's interview with Lawyers and Longhorns with Arnold and Itkin, two guys who big supporters of the program. Love Coach Becton saying we're a speed-based program, bigger, faster, stronger, wins 80% of the time. Did you get a chance to see that, or have you had interactions or any sort of insight with what Becton does to let you know? Just give yourself an opinion on what he's done with the strength and conditioning program.
I saw it and loved it. We heard a lot more from Becton, I think, when he first onboarded, and I think we were all diving into what he was doing. And I did see from like year 1 to year 2, I know Eric and the team at Inside Texas kind of covered just some transitions and some things that they learned after that first year of the program. Not just from a standpoint of getting players faster, but getting players stronger. There was a strength deficit. And so while speed is the priority, and I can explain why, speed without strength or speed without being able to be durable is a completely different thing. But I mean, speed, of course, it makes sense. I mean, the way we fly around on defense, it's necessary. Just starting there from the front, from the D line all the way back to the DBs, you got to cover space. But I think it's so critical because that's what we want to do on offense as well. Ian loves, Ian has coined the term Space Force, so we want to get guys out in space. We want to have leverage. And when you have guys in space, you have leverage. The only thing that prevents you, really stops you from that point, is do you have the speed to get away? Do you have the speed to have one step and have that one step be enough to get the yards you need? Speed is everything. There's so many guys who are going to be strong. They're going to be powerful. They're going to be explosive. But with the way we like to fly around on defense and the way that we use leverage and we use speed to create opportunities on offense, I mean, speed kills. It's critical for our program. And so I was happy to hear him say he leads with that. But there's so many other things beyond speed that he's done foundationally, just from a strength and conditioning standpoint, where our team is stronger. Their endurance, they're faster, longer. The fourth quarter, you don't see fatigue. I'm just very proud of the way these guys are able to persist through this entire season, maintaining speed, maintaining that physicality, and really playing for 4 quarters. We haven't seen an issue with that for years.
Drew, that persistence word is key, and you can, it's kind of cliche, you can lead a horse to water. Can you make them drink? What is it about an effective strength coach that makes all those things you do in the summer, running with weights behind you, lifting, doing bench presses with chains, so you have constant weight, like doing, certain types of split squats, like that builds muscle, that builds the physical part. What does the strength coach do to build the mental part to where, all right, fourth quarter, whether it be in a workout, whether it be in a game, that you can bring everything you've worked on out and onto the field?
I think the mental part is pretty, I'm not going to say easy, but you can be incredibly intentional about how you incorporate it into just your routine workouts or your routine programs that you have for your athletes. I think the real difference I see today in these programs that we didn't have, and it just comes down to technology and it comes down to resources, is individualized plans for each player, but also the accountability and tracking that goes with those individualized plans. You're not getting cookie cutter workouts that just everybody goes in and does the same thing. You have your team building workouts where you do those things, but everyone has specific needs, different body types, different metabolisms. There's so many different things that go into it. So I think the real difference is really the individualization of how they deploy their strength program, whether it be by position group or by individual player. And incorporating the mental aspect, all of it's going to take pushing. All of it's going to take straining beyond your physical exertion or what you think that is. So working the mental into stretching both collectively as a team and building that bond, but also stretching people individually, that's stuff he can probably do in his sleep when it comes to it. But it really comes down to building on both of the two. It's using your strength program or leveraging your strength program to build the mental side of things, because you got to do the training and the workouts anyway.
Eric, anything on that front? You watched that video. You got to write the article about it. See what Becton had talked about. You have some insight from inside sources. Anything else from what Becton talked about?
Yeah, he said a lot of things I liked, and he kind of chuckled at a couple old school notions like static stretching, to start your workout. Like nobody really has done that in 10, 15 years, but I think some people still actually do that. I like what he talked about anthropometry, which is the length of your limbs and how that affects how much weight you're going to be able to carry in the right way. That kind of is tangential to what Kyle Flood discussed today about Trevor Gooseby. And monitoring his weight gain throughout high school and to the point where, he finally saw enough weight added, he felt confident about him being able to carry 310, 315 eventually. And that's when the offer finally came. That's a huge part of evaluation. When a college coach shakes your hand, they are sizing you up. They're not being just friendly. When they slap you on the back, they're checking how dense you are. It is all a test. They're measured. They're looking at your wrists. It really is like that. I watch them do it and I laugh. The kid's just happy to meet the coach, and I know exactly what's happening. But they meant it. He talked about how they look at your knee circumference and all that, just because it's very important to understand how big an athlete is going to get. How big they can get is at a comfortable weight. That's when the physics get in your favor. That's when the size and speed come to bear. And it ties back in what we were just talking about as well as being a speed-based program. They can afford to be a speed-based program because they're already going to be naturally bigger than most teams, just because they're able to get bigger, better athletes than the average school. That's the big advantage that the Blue Bloods, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia have. They're going to get the bigger guys. Now get the bigger guys stronger and faster, and you've got way more advantages than. And that's really what we should see this week on Wednesday. Is you're just going to have way more advantages than your opponent.
We'll keep on going in just a second. First, got to show some love to our sponsor. The first one is Luxe Kitchen and Bath.
This video is brought to you by Luxe Kitchen and Bath. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook, and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring to life that dream vision of your special home. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team provides full remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today. Or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get a free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's LUXE. Or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Link in the description.
Thank you, LC. Interesting comment from Jeff G. Separate issue, but knowing how to form tackles, a nice change up from stingers being as common as oldness cramps. There's a little bit of everything that goes into that. Football's a physical game. You can do everything fundamentally, and you can end up with a broken arm. It just happens that way. But knowing how to tackle, knowing how to, at this point, safely put head across, it can help sustain guys and keep guys going throughout the year. Whereas we have seen Ian some tackling methodologies that's just throw yourself at them, go, and kind of throws caution into the wind, and that can lead into issues, to say the least.
Yeah, that was the knock on the Orlando era, was that tackling and taking on blocks. The encouragement was go run into that guy as hard as you can, and that should do the trick. And then Chris Ash, and I'm pretty sure since Chris Ash, they've been doing more of the rugby tackling stuff. I'm sure if we say that, somebody's going to get on here and say rugby tackling is awful and it doesn't work, and no real program does that. But I'm pretty sure Texas and most programs are doing it that way.
Haven't been as many concussions this year, at least that we've heard about, and certainly people haven't been missing as much time. I'm struggling to recall a concussion at all this season. I might be missing a couple, but it doesn't seem like it's happened nearly as much as we've heard of in the past.
I will say we've also had some instances throughout the season where they threw a flag because they thought it was targeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they went back and reviewed, they realized, oh, nope, it was a shoulder.
Yep.
They weren't targeting, was not leading with the head. So whatever we're doing is right on that line because it may look physical, it may look targeting, but it seems like we're maximizing both being physical and being able to still leave with our shoulders and not do anything illegal. And that's happened a few times this season.
It also seems like they're giving a lot more grace now on incidental helmet contact, which was the thing that was just drives you nuts on so many of the targeting calls. Is when a guy goes perfectly, makes a shoulder tackle across the midsection, and then the target guy lowers his head at the last minute, and their faces go like that or whatever, and it's a target. Yeah. It feels like they've really taken a lot of that out with the reviews, which has been it's such a mercy to the sport because sometimes those would just be unbearable.
If I remember right, the main tackling, I don't want to say certifier because that's not the exact right word, but it kind of fits. It's called Atavis, and they're a company that I know Chris Ash used. And I think one time when I asked PK, kind of at the early portion of his tenure, he's like, look, we don't contract with them, but we do the head across rugby tackling thing. And I'm almost certain that like the Texas High School Coaches Association contracts Atavis to teach kids how to tackle for, head across rugby tackling. And I know some old school people who just want to bang heads and bring the guy down as hard as possible may not like the idea of rugby tackling, but it's one of those things where the sport is safer and is going to continue because of effective tackling. And at this point, it's also one of those things where it's, you have to do it effectively. One of the other interesting things that came from today's media session, Cam Scatabo is extremely confident, to say the least. He's someone who believes he's the best running back in the nation. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty exists, but Ashton Jeanty went against a mostly Group of 5 schedule, a Mountain West schedule. Cam Scatabo did his against a Big 12 schedule. Ian, what does Arizona – a different Big 12 schedule. Ian, what does Arizona State do that allows the physical person that is Scatabo to find a lot of different success?
They have a really good run game scheme. They use the tight end well. They use the quarterback option well. They run gap schemes. They run stuff out of different – they'll use the pistol, or they'll get under center at times to give him angles when he approaches the line of scrimmage. And then when they're in the gun, they do backside quarterback options so that makes it hard to get your defense to populate the football, as Sark says, because you've got guys worrying about the quarterback pulling it around the edge. So they're very multiple. They're even though they're lined up in the spread, like I think all the time, it's like a Texas high school team. They may be spread out, but it's still just so they can run the ball with the running back.
What are some of the things, Drew, when you're going up against a great running back, and unquestionably Scatabo, is that that you really have to focus in on? Like, yeah, you can be in the right spot, but what happens when you get to that spot and you have to take them on? What are some things that you really have to hone in on at that point?
I mean, there's two things. One thing is just be fit. Make sure you are doing your job. Be where you're supposed to be. Make sure you're fitting. There's three things. Make sure you're fitting correctly. 3, make sure you're exploding through whoever your one-on-one is while you're in the same, while you're leveraged appropriately. Like, you're just not taking on blocks and looking to see where the back is going to go. I think with a back like this, especially with the way he can just accelerate and find spaces, make you miss. I'm not comparing him necessarily to Deuce Vaughn, But Deuce Vaughn was one of those backs where, regardless of how they ran the zone, or regardless of what they ran, you knew you had to be where you're supposed to be first. And you just couldn't peek. You couldn't go back door. And the last thing is you have to rally. You have to have the speed to rally. You have to have multiple guys knowing it's not just the job of a few to get there. We have the team speed. If they try to get to an edge, I'm not really concerned about them getting to edges as much as I am about them finding creases really somewhere between the tackles or right off tackle. But as far as stretching for an outside zone type run or getting to the edge in that way, I just don't feel as threatened. But I do know, I mean, look at their schedule. They have no reason not to be confident. Look at how many points they put up against so many teams. I thought Iowa State's defense was a great defense, supposed to be a great defense, supposed to stop things like this. And, of course, there were some self-inflicted wounds. But when you go back and watch this team, there's no reason they shouldn't be confident. There's no reason they shouldn't believe that they're able to control the ball on the ground. There's no reason they shouldn't believe they'll have opportunities to have some shot plays and some plays that are just drawn up to score and get some chunks. So they probably mentally, they're thinking like, hey, we have 21 to 28 to 35 points schemed into our mentality, schemed into what we intend to do against Texas. I expect them to be confident, but I also expect our guys to know you got to rally to the ball. You got to stop him because he is the catalyst. He's the engine that keeps them running. And you got to be assignment sound. So there's this. We could win this by 21 plus points, but we could also be in a fight too if we're not doing those things on defense.
Eric, what have you picked up from talking to your sources inside the program, just about what they expect to see from Scatabo and what they expect to have to do on Wednesday?
The coaches are definitely pumping him up as a great player and mentioning a lot of the same things that Drew's talking about, and some of the things that we talked about earlier this morning as well. You got to be in the right place. When you got to be where the coaches want you to be is number one. Play leverage right and all that, and rally to the ball. But I think another thing goes into it as far as dominating the defensive line. I think Texas has a good length advantage up front, specifically in the interior, and I don't know that that Arizona State's going to be ready for that. We talked about it earlier. When you're a blue blood school, you tend to have the advantages on size and then the measurables that the NFL is looking for. Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, Barron Sorrell, all those guys have more length than what these guys are used to seeing, especially with length and power and size. So I think there's a chance for Texas to get him on a number of plays before he truly gets going. That's probably the best way to corral him is to not let him build up steam.
Ian, aside from mobility, kind of looking at the rest of the Sun Devil offense, Sam Leavitt obviously thinks very highly of himself. We'll see how much of that comes to fruition. But aside from what he can maybe do on his legs in the surprise run game, what's he been best at when it comes to throwing the football for Kenny Dillingham?
Well, they don't let him throw it too much. They just like to run the ball, but he throws the RPO well. His scrambling is actually really good. He's much more powerful when he cuts downhill than you kind of expect. It's not just that he's faster; he's kind of got some burst behind him when he runs. Not like Klubnik, like Klubnik was really quick. But he wasn't going to run through arm tackles. Leavitt's a little more deceptively powerful, we could say. I
think he's the arch level runner. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, he might be a little quicker.
Yeah, he reminds me of Arch when he runs. He's not quite
Jonathan Smith wanted him, right? He signed with Smith specifically at Michigan State, correct?
Yep.
Was he inherited by Smith?
I think he was.
I don't know.
Either way, he was there at least for
first year, right?
He was there at least for a year.
No, he was inherited by Smith.
Okay. Well, I was about to say it was one of those things where Smith obviously values drop back passing, but likes mobility. Leavitt needs no backup. That's pretty good. But it is, Ian, one of those things where he's not asked to do as he would in the Jonathan Smith offense, and even in now these Kenny Dillingham offenses, he's not asked to do a ton of different things.
Right. He'll throw to a spot on an RPO or play action, and then he's asked to do a fair bit in the run game because he actually has to be involved. You can better bet on Levitt having a bigger role in the run game than you would think because they're going to need it. It's possible they could look at that Clemson game film and say, hey, maybe we should be running some of these spread passing sets too. But I'd still know if they have the athletes for that Clemson had. I mean, I know they don't. I don't know if they can even approach much of that stuff. Yeah, Drew says QB draw for sure. QB counter too. Like any run scheme adapted to the quarterback, they can mix it in. And they probably will. They're going to be treating this game like Game 7. So lots of Levitt.
Drew, when you do see a quarterback on the run, what's that mean for a defender? Like, think if you're Anthony Hill. Like, what does that mean when you see a quarterback out there? You have to be a little bit more mindful than back when you were playing, obviously. But what do you try to do when that's going on?
I mean, fresh meat, especially if he's a running quarterback. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to be mindful of if he's a slider, if he's a guy who wants to slide, because you can get caught in that. But if he wants to be the tough guy, let's get him tough. So hopefully he has a choice or wants to be the tough guy. I'm actually happy that he is as physical and as athletic as he is. Those are the guys you actually want to trust and believe in themselves because then they're just an easier target. So, yeah, hopefully he comes in with that confidence. But I actually agree that he will be in the run game a bit more. He'll be a part of the game. I mean, we kind of know what we're getting from Scatterboo. It's just a matter of what are we going to get from him. And I think really with his legs too. So we'll see.
Before we keep on going, got to get in one more word from our sponsor. That is David McClellan. LC, take it away.
I'm just going to say, guys, you probably need a fiduciary financial advisor. And I've got the guy for you. His name is David McClellan with Forum Financial. He works broadly and deeply with his clients as a financial life coach. And he should know something about coaching because he won several national championships as a swimmer for the University of Texas. He specializes in financial planning and has contributed numerous articles to Kipling on the topic of retirement tax bombs. So contact David today to be your fiduciary financial planner and schedule a 1-hour consultation to assess your financial situations. The free consultation is available, so just give him a call. The number is 312-933-8823. That's 312-933-8823. His email is also in the description below.
Great swimmer, great dude. Give David McClellan a call. Eric, we're kind of we are in the portal era, and Texas is going to face players that were formerly on the roster. Do you think there's anything added for Texas when facing guys like Prince Dorba, when facing guys like Troy O'Meary, countless others, like emotionally, or is it like, okay, maybe we know what these guys' tendencies are a little bit more?
No, it's just a reminder that Texas has the advantage. You know, these players were going down. Not like you don't want to say relegated to a lesser school, but that's for all intents and purposes that's what happened. A lot of guys that left Texas, and not just these guys, but many more, starting after Sark's first season, were exiled to make room for better players. So that's just the nature of it. They had the shot at Texas and it didn't work for them. That doesn't mean they're not without talent. They were at Texas for a reason to begin with, but they weren't exactly what the staff was looking for. So to me, it's just a reminder that Texas has a more talented roster. And a couple of those guys are solid players. Don't get me wrong. And some had bad luck. O'Meary had bad luck. He was going to be an exceptional wide receiver at Texas before his knee injuries. I thought Xavier Alford gave up on his time at Texas a little too early. He's a pretty good player too. But for the most part, Texas just has a more talented roster, and that's one of the first things you can point to as evidence.
One of the things that Chris Brennett brings up here is that most of these players they're cordial. Like, unless like they were told explicitly, and Eric, I know you've talked about this on here, like usually the conversations that Zach Swanson suggested happen don't happen. Most of these guys are told, like, good luck, we wish you well, nothing but the best, we'll help you however we can. And then you have Zach Swanson being told, like, oh, I was told to leave. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
It's weird.
I don't know if I believe that. He definitely wasn't kicked out, no matter what. I mean, kicked out. That's Jonte Cook. Zach Swanson was not kicked out. I think they had a frank conversation with him. And again, it goes back to Sark's first year. We said that a lot of these guys are leaving, don't necessarily want to leave. The writing is just on the wall. They've already been passed up on the depth chart, or they're going to get passed up, or, in their case, they had a chance and they didn't play well. BJ Foster comes to mind. And that's just where it is at football. It's a bottom line sport, especially as it becomes more and more professionalized. And, there's not nearly as much of playing out the string as there once was. A lot of guys aren't just sticking around to get their degree because, again, a lot of them do want to play too. They're competitive. It just didn't work out for whatever reason for him at Texas. But saying he got kicked out, I don't believe that. And I don't believe the conversation was as harsh as he said it was. Though he apparently is pretty upset by it. So I don't know. We'd always heard that they liked him. He was just 20 pounds away from being a good player for 3 years in a row.
It seems like one of those things where he's extrapolating a lot from that conversation. And, hey, good for him. If that's going to motivate you to be the best Arizona State Sun Devil you can possibly be, good for you. But we'll also understand, like, what probably went down. Ian, is there any of that group of Longhorns now on Arizona State's roster that's threatening Texas in this game?
Threatening. Alfred
trying to threaten.
Alfred is a really good player. Swanson is going to need all that motivation to slant gaps and not get just trampled by the Texas offensive line. I don't think that motivation is going to make him like a dominant player on Wednesday, but it may help him, do some pretty crappy, thankless work in the trenches that could help them. I'm trying to think of who else. I mean, I wish Jake
Dorba plays.
Who's that?
Dorba plays. Prince Dorba.
Yeah, Dorba, kind of same story. I wish Jake Smith had been able to get healthy enough to be a threat to Texas, but it doesn't seem like he ever was able to get that together. So does that answer your question? Basically, no.
Yeah, no. We had that one determined. Yeah, it's Texas is a winner. Texas is the apex predator in NIL and in the portal, and so guys they lose for the most part are, they're not what they're looking for, and so the advantages that they have on the D line versus their O line, I think, are going to show up very similar in Texas's O line versus their D line, and Zach Swanson again is a good example of that. Probably Dorba as well.
Before we get out of here, this will be one of our last big shows before all the playoffs start. You got the Fiesta Bowl tomorrow on New Year's Eve with Penn State and Boise State, and you got the 3 back-to-back games starting with Texas. So I want to get a little bit of insight from everybody on what they're thinking about the rest of the playoff games. Ian, Penn State and Boise State, just kind of a quick key and where you think it's going to go, and we'll go around the horn on what y'all think is going to happen in the rest of those playoff games.
I think Boise is going to be super prepared for this. I think they're going to jump all over Penn State and what they want to do, load up the middle of the field, throw exotic packages at them, and James Franklin will find a way to blow it in the end. So I'm thinking Boise State in that game.
I'm going Penn State, talent advantage. Sorry, Ian's I think Ian's out thinking himself on this one, but I'll go Penn State. Just massive talent advantage across the board.
You say that, and then it's going to come down to some like 4th and 1 call, and you're going to be like, "Oh man, here we go."
Yeah, that could very well could.
Well, then you let Andy Kotelnicki grab the wheel instead of letting James Franklin do it. Drew, what are your thoughts on that one?
Penn State doesn't lose games like this to teams that they're better than, so I don't expect it. But honestly, I would have had the same doubts Ian had. But after watching Penn State actually put up some points against Oregon, like see their offense do some things I haven't seen them do all season against Oregon, yeah, I'm actually looking forward to seeing what they do on offense in this game. The game at home was just too, I mean, the weather was terrible, but I'm anxious to see what their offense does. I think they can put up some points for sure.
What does Genty's rushing total have to be for Boise State to win this game?
I don't think it matters.
I think
175, 200 probably. Yeah, I don't know. This Penn State is somewhere in between the hype that they get every year and the teams they've had in the past, where I think they're not as good as the hype that they get, but they're better than what they've shown in the past. I think they had signs of life against Ohio State. They look more dangerous to me than some of the other Penn State teams. And they got a couple really good stud defensive players too. That edge is awesome.
Yeah,
they always have that. They have Micah Parsons to.
Yeah, I mean they do have that. I just think they're a little bit more dangerous than they have been in the past. Maybe I'm wrong, but they'll get to the semifinals, and I think they'll be happy to consider that a successful season.
Oh, for sure.
You can rest assured that somebody good at football is wearing 11 at Penn State, going back to LeVar Arrington days. Yeah, there you go. I got a little bit up there. Rose Bowl, Oregon and Ohio State. Ian, I'm gonna save you for last so we can get the Ryan Day diatribe. But Eric, what's gonna happen in front of the San Gabriel Mountains?
Man, I've been thinking about that game a lot, and I still don't know how it's gonna play out. I think Ohio State has the better roster, and then Oregon has the better quarterback. And the coach, Lanning, I think is probably better than Day on game day. Seems to get the most out of his guys. He's definitely a bit of a gambler. So I lean towards Oregon, but I could see Ohio State. I would pick Oregon by 3. But Ohio State probably should have won that game in Eugene in October. I think they outplayed Oregon in a few different ways, but I'm going to go with the team with the better quarterback, and that's Dillon Gabriel.
Drew?
I can't unsee Dillon Gabriel just doing whatever he needs to do to win this game. Also can't unsee Ohio State having all this talent, but they just go through droughts where they're not even leaning into it. So it's hard for me to bet against Dillon Gabriel in this offense, because if he gets going, the running game gets going, the receivers get going, they always find explosive plays. I think they can outscore Ohio State when it's all said and done.
I think Oregon can win in a rock fight. And not to say 32-31 was a rock fight the first time, because each team had some success, but I think both teams are different now. Like, just that Ohio State offensive line is just, not as strong as it was when they were healthy. So I'm thinking Oregon on this one. Ian, let's hear it for our old buddy Third Base Day.
Yeah, he's used to having. He's kind of like somebody said he was the Michael Jordan of James Franklin's, and that's pretty much it. Like, they need to have the talent advantage, which they do, but it needs to be pretty big. A lot of times Penn State gives them a run for their money, and Ohio State just barely edges them out, on an annual basis. And then they get to Michigan, and Harbaugh's got him outsmarted and out-toughed and everything else. Clemson used to outsmart Ryan Day. I think Lanning is going to get it. I think Oregon's good enough and balanced enough to be able to win this game. But I will say they have this redshirt freshman they played in the Big Ten. No, first round against Tennessee at Ohio State. They played this redshirt freshman at guard who hadn't played all year, and he was just driving Tennessee's D lineman off the ball, and that has given me a little bit of pause. If they could actually just run the ball, honestly, then Ohio State becomes that. Basically solves the Michigan formula. If they can do that, then I mean they could win the championship. So that's just something to watch for.
Jabbar Muhammad versus Jeremiah Smith in whatever form or fashion should be some must-see TV for multiple senses.
Sure.
Last, go ahead.
I'm sure he'll have help too.
That's true. Jim Knowles is no dummy. Last one, Notre Dame and Georgia. Georgia, obviously, going to be with Gunnar Stockton instead of their Carson Beck after he had Tommy John. Thank Baron Sorrell for that one. But Drew, what do you think happens when the Irish and the Dogs face off in the Superdome?
We've, of course, watched Georgia twice against Texas. And when I look at Notre Dame and Georgia, I just think as good as Notre Dame has been all season, as physical as their mentality is and the way that they want to go about doing their business, they have not seen Georgia. They have not. Their offensive line has not seen Georgia. They haven't seen Georgia. And this is a dialed-in Georgia with Kirby Smart having a chip on the shoulder and all the other things. I've seen this team be down. I've seen this team be in position to where they should lay down, or their talent won't shine through some of the adversity, and they show up. So it's just hard for me to imagine, with the amount of time they've had off, time to get quarterback, the time to get kind of everybody on board with the game plan. They've watched the film. They know what Notre Dame's game plans are. I just don't see how Notre Dame finds enough points that they need against this Georgia defense. And I'm biased because I've just seen them do it to us twice. So I just don't see it. Maybe there's another team that can beat Georgia down the line. I don't see it being Notre Dame. It may have to be us or Oregon.
Georgia got Tennessee too. It's not like it was only Texas. Yeah, Georgia. So basically, another way to look at it is Georgia's played its best against the best opponent, and in the most important situations. And incoming Notre Dame is a very important must-win game. This is going to be the rock and stick fight of the next 4 games. And I've got Georgia winning for the same things, the same reasons that Drew does. I think that they're just a superior version of Notre Dame at this point.
That was the approach I'm taking. It's just like, even with Stockton instead of or as opposed to the quarterback, they'll be able to do what Georgia does on a regular basis because they have the talent advantage everywhere else, I feel like. But maybe Ian, they can get the game of their life, Notre Dame, from their quarterback.
Yeah, maybe. Probably not, though. I think I'm with you guys. I actually think I have like 2 almost contradictory opinions. One is that Carson Beck was maybe the most skilled pocket passer in the country. And second, that
when did you have that opinion? What week was that you had that opinion?
Most of the season.
Oh my gosh!
But he didn't have receivers.
Oh, give me a break.
I think they are better without him because now they're just running the ball with Etienne and keeping it simple and not trying to involve these receivers that don't have hands and don't have elite speed.
They're not force-feeding Carson Beck, which I can kind of get.
I mean, they would get into holes, and then they would ask Carson Beck to dig them out, and sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't. I think they're way more in their comfort zone now. That it's like when they traded out JT Daniels for Stetson Bennett. Yeah, and they're like, just give us a dual threat game manager that can hand off and keep the ball every now and then. Stetson Bennett became a little more than that eventually, but I think they're going to be more comfortable with that. I am curious how the backup punter looks because Thorson was amazing. Every time he kicked it in DKR, we were just – do you remember this, Drew?
Yeah.
First time that guy kicked it, I was just like, oh.
Long day.
There goes the field position. It's
Every time.
like that's going to be on one side decisively at that point. So, no, I get it. Mike Bobo's not great, but he's not an idiot. And maybe Gunnar Stockton helps him find that perfect medium. Guys, anything else before we get on out of here? Any hot takes y'all want to throw down on the playoffs?
No, Ian's the hot take machine, and he's pretty normal tonight by Ian standards.
Yeah, the football season's ending. All our rivals are done playing, so
Yeah, I mean, we probably could have spent a half hour on OU and A&M situations, but
Heck, even the Citrus Bowl is going to be interesting when you got Michigan and Alabama doing that thing.
Oh man,
That's why you go to the Inside Texas message boards. Go to the bowl game discussion, and that means if you want to go there, you got to join Inside Texas. $1 will get you 1 week. That'll get you all the way through the first week of the new year. Of course, stick around here, like this video, subscribe to the channel. Not going to want to miss anything. We will have our normal pregame, postgame, day after, all our stuff on Wednesday with the crew you see here. Eric, Drew, Ian, Paul, all those guys will be around. So make sure you stick with Inside Texas. Gentlemen, thank you all for a great Monday night. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com.